The photographer that I researched that I'll be basing my assignment on is Alessandra Sanguinetti. Alessandra was born in New York and raised in Argentina, where she lived for 30 years. Her project that I am mostly focusing on is her home project. This collection of photos maps her childhood home, photographing remote items along with intimate portraits of her family members. Here is a quote by Sanguinetti describing her project. "This work isn't a reflection of my childhood, which was a happy one, but more of a goodbye to it and a beginning to come to terms with so many years already gone by and my parents being vulnerable. I try to see them and the apartment I grew up in as it is now, with all its remnants of the past intact, except for traces of time etched on skins and surfaces." The first photograph that stood out to me, this is called Daddy's Shoes. I was drawn to the fact they were just peeking out under the bed and that you could see that there was some dust on them, maybe implying that they haven't been worn in quite some time. My father passed away 7 years ago, and many of his belongings have still been untouched to this day. I want to incorporate this part of my life in my own project and show the stillness of things at my house that we have no reason to move. Another concept I find interesting about these shoes themselves is that you don't know where they're going or where they've been, but the look of them can sometimes tell you, whether they're sparkling clean or worn and muddy. I feel like you can also tell a lot about a person based on the pair of shoes they wear. The next two photos that I'm going to show aren't from the home project, but they're both taken in Argentina and have influenced my own work for my next project. This is called Black Cloud. It reminds me a lot of my relationship with my childhood best friend Renee. Sanguinetti was drawn to these cousins by their affection for each other, despite their differences in appearance. Renee has struggled with her weight since we were little kids and still does to this day, but it's never made my love for her or the way we display our friendship any different. The two girls are seen embracing each other on a cloudy day and seem to have gone swimming prior to the photo being taken. It shows the love that kids have for each other and how things like appearance and body image don't matter. I've supported Renee and helped her love herself no matter what she looks like, and I think it's very beautiful that Sanguinetti was able to capture a photograph that shows that between two young girls. This photo, Ruben makes his bed, made me get a sad sense from all the blue. The curtain, the walls, his bed sheets, the shirts hung up, and the shirts on his back. It made me think that maybe that man sleeps alone in that bed, and maybe he lost a loved one of his own. I feel like it also shows the simplicity of the way a lot of people in Argentina live. It seems to be a small room with not that much furniture or space. All it has is everything you need. When I look at this photo, it makes me think that this man doesn't really have a lot going on. He just lives the same day every day. He wakes up, gets dressed, makes his bed, and moves on with his routine. This photograph is called Outdoor. It's very straightforward as it's just a lock on the door. As simple as a lock is, this instantly reminded me of the similar lock we have on our front door at my house. I thought it was funny how I came across this photo because I would always make sure that this second lock was secured before I went to bed, in fear that someone would break in the middle of the night. It's also interesting because now, during this pandemic, we're locked in our houses, unable to go outside. I also noticed the worn-out marks on the door below the lock, where the chain meets the wood as it is unlocked. This is a very similar sight, and it makes me feel like it's an old house that has had the same lock on it for years. This one is called Her Hands, and it's a photograph of Sanguinetti's mother washing her hands. I was drawn to the emphasis on our veins, which is starting to be more evident on my own mother's hands. Besides the fact that she's just washing her hands, as we have also been instructed to do so in today's times, I found it interesting how something so simple like washing your hands could look so elegant and show so much more character and definition to the person who was doing it. In this photo, before even looking at it, service elevator, I had photographed one very similar of my two dogs looking out of my front door that I wanted to include in my upcoming project. Something I think about every time I see my dogs sitting in front of the door is how they're always so curious to see what's going on outside and how they do it all day. It also reminds me how it's a barrier between them being where they really want to be, but also how they're unable to unless someone decides to take them out to go for a walk. Sanguinetti's photograph reminded me a lot of a dog in a jail cell, from the fence in front of it, which made me think of how our homes are kind of like jail cells keeping dogs from being free. This last photo is called Kitchen Counter. I like this photo because of its realness and stillness and how probably nothing on that counter was moved to capture it. I like how it shows clutter, from books to 2 different telephones, old pictures that seem to be untouched once posted on the corkboard, and what looks like a bag of flour or maybe dried pasta. When I first look at the photo, I'm immediately drawn to the pattern on the backsplash, but when I look at the pictures on the board, it tells a story of her childhood and the people that are part of Sanguinetti and her family's life. I feel like a lot of current photos can be told photos from the past, as the past is what makes you are today. Although we were instructed to stay home and our project changed to be based around coronavirus, I decided that I still wanted to continue my previous idea and keep studying the work of Alessandra Sanguinetti as my influence for my project. Her home project obviously relates to being home, as most of us are at this point. My childhood home has gone through a lot that has shaped my life before and where it is going. My home used to house 6 people, and now it houses 3. My mother, my older brother, and me. The 3 of us have lived through the tragedies together, but the time has come where my mother wants to sell our house and move on to a new beginning. I love Sanguinetti's quote of how the past is still intact, except for traces of time etched on skins and surfaces, and how it's a goodbye to her childhood. I want to capture my childhood home before it's gone, and how those that have left our house still have remnants of them in it. My family is using this quarantine to slowly say goodbye to our childhood, and continue on with a new environment, new jobs, and a new beginning.